Good evening. I'd like to call to order Albany City Council meeting for April 20th, 2026. Councilmember Jordan, could you please read the land acknowledgement?
Yes, Mayor. City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated villages of the Shawn. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home.
Thank you. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Jordan.
Here.
Councilmember Lopez is not here. Councilmember Mickey is participating from the teleconferencing location. Councilmember Mickey.
Here.
Vice Mayor Hanson Romero.
Here.
Mayor McQuaid.
Here. And we now have a quorum. We had no closed session. That takes us to ceremonial matters. 4-1, proclamation, recognition of Day of Remembrance of the Armenian Genocide. Vice Mayor Hanson Romero will read the proclamation. Ganus, would you like to meet her at the podium?
In recognition of Day of Remembrance of the Armenian Genocide, April 24th, 2026. Whereas on April 24th, 1915, the Ottoman Empire, now Turkey, perpetrated against Armenian people what is commonly referred to as the first genocide of the 20th century, which continued until 1923 and resulted in the death of 1.5 million Armenian men, women, and children. And whereas since memories fade with time, it is important to remind ourselves about human tragedies that have taken place. And whereas those who survived the Armenian genocide and their successors have had to work hard to make these tragic events known to the world, battling cover-ups, misinformation, and denial. And whereas, as we remember the victims and survivors on this somber anniversary, we honor the strength and resilience of the Armenian people who have built new lives and thriving community all around the world. And whereas, as a community, it is appropriate for us to stand together and join our Armenian brothers and sisters in an effort to memorialize their fallen ancestors and to ensure that this horrible act is not repeated. And whereas, as we remember the past, let us also dedicate ourselves to building a greater future as a testament to mankind's indomitable spirit. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, the Albany City Council does hereby proclaim April 24th, 2026 as a day of remembrance of the Armenian Genocide.
In memory of my grandfather who lost his wife and 5 of his children, and on behalf of the 1.5 families of 1.5 million Armenians and over 100,000 Greeks and Assyrians who perished, I would like to thank our mayor, Peggy McQuaid, and the members of the City Council for issuing the proclamation regarding the Armenian genocide. Adolf Hitler is often quoted as saying, "Who, after all, speaks today of the annihilations of the Armenians?" It took more than a century for the United States to formally recognize the Armenian genocide, while Turkey continues to deny it. By acknowledging this history, we take a stand against denial and help ensure that such atrocities are never forgotten nor repeated. Yet, as meaningful as these proclamations are, they are not enough. Even today, genocides are continuing to occur, and this one with support of our own tax dollars, despite widespread opposition, both here in the United States and around the world. We may have the numbers, but the numbers alone are not enough. We must also have the courage to act. We must stay engaged and continue to speak out. We cannot look away or convince ourselves that we are too busy, that doesn't concern our families or our communities. We must raise our voices, reach out to our elected officials, representatives, and senators. That is why I am especially proud of our city council for taking stands, including, for example, the passing of a new ethical investment policy where the city avoids investments in companies linked to war crimes or crimes against humanity. This is the kind of leadership and decisive action we need and must continue to uphold and strengthen. So once again, thank you to our city council members for your leadership and commitment to human rights. Your actions sent a powerful message to the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Proclamation 4.2, recognition of Earth Day. Councilmember Jordan will read the proclamation.
Whereas humankind is currently facing tremendous global challenges, including large-scale migration, extreme inequality and poverty, degradation of ecosystems, mass extinction of species, and global climate change, all of which have a profound effect on every community. And whereas April 22nd has marked Earth Day each year since 1970 in recognition of the need for environmental conservation, and whereas all people of this earth, no matter their race, gender, income, sexual orientation, gender identity, ability, or national origin, have a right to a healthy environment. And whereas it is necessary for the citizens of our global community to develop green jobs and to build an innovative and equitable green economy to combat global challenges. And whereas expanding environmental education and climate literacy is vital to enhance awareness about the environment, inform decision-making, and protect future generations. And whereas it is more important than ever to act locally and to cooperate internationally and defend the environmental progress that has been heretofore gained. And whereas Earth Day is an annual reminder of the constant need for environmental activism, stewardship commitments, and sustainability efforts. And whereas the City of Albany is committed to addressing climate action and adaptation, guided by the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, which was adopted by the City Council in 2019, and whereas the City of Albany adopted a climate emergency declaration, resolving that the Albany City Council endorses and commits to participating in climate action and adaptation efforts at the local, regional, state, national, and global levels, focusing on emission reduction and the widespread elimination of fossil fuels. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, the Albany City Council recognizes April 22nd, 2026 as Earth Day throughout Albany and encourages all citizens, businesses, and institutions to use Earth Day to celebrate the Earth and promote environmental and climate literacy. Signed, Mayor Peggy McQuaid.
And our final proclamation this evening is in honor of Fire Chief James Jim Boito upon his retirement from the City of Albany. And I have the distinct honor and privilege to present the proclamation. City of Albany Proclamation. In honor of Fire Chief James Jim Boito upon his retirement from the City of Albany. Whereas James Jim Boito was appointed as an Albany firefighter paramedic on May 21st, 1996, beginning more than 30 years of dedicated service to the City of Albany. And whereas Jim was promoted through the ranks to fire engineer on June 12th, 2000, lieutenant on August 16th, 2010, and captain on July 23, 2012, having worked in every position level within the fire department and demonstrating a deep commitment to learning and excellence in each role. And whereas Jim excelled as a paramedic preceptor, sharing his extensive knowledge and helping develop the next generation of firefighters and paramedics. And whereas Jim served as a mentor for aspiring fire engineers, training them on how to drive, pump, and become effective and skilled in their duties. And whereas, as a skilled grant writer, Jim successfully secured a $500,000 grant in 2009 enabled the fire department to acquire a much-needed Quint apparatus, significantly enhancing its fire suppression and rescue capabilities. And whereas Jim served as president of the Albany Firefighters Union, where he worked tirelessly to give back to the community and strengthen the connection between the fire department and the residents of Albany. And whereas Jim served on the Apparatus Specification Committee for Albany Engine 2, Truck 1, and Medic 2, contributing his hands-on operational knowledge to ensure the fire department acquired the most effective and reliable emergency response vehicles. And whereas Jim earned a Bachelor of Arts in Public Safety and Emergency Management from Grand Canyon University while balancing the responsibilities of his career, further strengthening his knowledge and leadership capabilities in the field of emergency services. And whereas Jim was appointed as the City of Albany Fire Chief on November 10th, 2021, providing steady, positive, and caring leadership through the COVID-19 pandemic and other challenges. And during his tenure as chief, he successfully increased daily staffing from 6 to 7 firefighters per shift, improving response capabilities and firefighter safety. It's a long one. And whereas one of the first major initiatives Jim advanced upon appointment as fire chief with expertise, collaboration, and dedication was the assessment of fire hazards on Albany Hill, working across multiple departments to develop an actionable plan that reduces wildfire risk while enhancing the natural environment. And whereas Jim was integral in securing additional funding with the partners at UC Berkeley to support apparatus replacement and operational readiness, strengthening the fire department's long-term capabilities. And whereas in partnership with surrounding fire departments, Jim was able to successfully obtain federal funding, including $250,000 for the City of Albany through partnership with Congresswoman Simon to help fund a regional training center to develop and deliver superior training that improves the safety of East Bay residents and emergency responders. And whereas Jim served as president of the Alameda County Fire Chiefs Association, providing strong advocacy and leadership for firefighters and emergency medical services professionals across the region. And whereas Jim served as president of the EMS section of the Alameda County Fire Chiefs Association, providing strong advocacy and leadership for firefighters and EMS professionals across the region. And whereas Jim was deployed on numerous strike teams throughout his career, including the devastating Camp Fire in Paradise, California, exemplifying his commitment to regional mutual aid and support for communities in crisis. And whereas throughout his distinguished career, Jim has taken great pride in his professional knowledge, mentored countless colleagues, and demonstrated unwavering dedication to the safety and well-being of Albany residents, businesses, and his fellow firefighters. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Albany City Council expresses its gratitude and appreciation to Fire Chief James Boito for his many years of dedicated service to the City of Albany.
Thank you all. Let's see if we can get through this. Excuse the emotions. Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager, management team, members, and my crew. I stand before you today with a full heart of gratitude and humility. To have the chance to live my dream of being a firefighter. It started as a volunteer in 1991 and concluding after 30 years at Albany. First and foremost, I want to thank my parents, Dina and Peggy. Literally none of this would happen without you. They had nothing but support for me. They taught me values of service, integrity, and hard work from the very beginning. And I'm thankful for the unwavering love and support. My brother Mike and family, his family, Jen, Luciana, thank you for always supporting me throughout my fire service career. Your encouragement and belief in me meant more than you know. To my wife, Sandra, the strongest supporter, the most incredible partner, thank you for the countless days of handling our life and home, for understanding the unpredictable schedule, for loving me through every challenging call, the long shifts, and when I transitioned to the fire chief position. After I was appointed, friends would ask what days and hours I work now that I'm the fire chief, and her answer was all of them. You've been incredible. None of this would be possible without your sacrifice and love. To the amazing members of the Albany Fire Department, words cannot express my love and appreciation for all of you. You are and will always be my second family. You're the biggest reason I have looked forward to coming to work. Your dedication, courage, professionalism, and camaraderie made this department truly special. Every call we ran together, every training we pushed through, every success we celebrated as a team has shaped who I am as a firefighter, engineer, lieutenant, captain, and now as chief. Thank you for your trust and for allowing me the honor of leading such an outstanding organization. To the management team, thank you for your patience as I learned to be a department head, your collaboration to make the community better, and letting me know when I wasn't doing the best I could to support our collective mission to serve the community. To the student manager, Nicole, thank you for your leadership, partnership, and trust. You took a risk when you recommended appointing me as fire chief to the council. Your support and trust in me were instrumental in moving our department forward together. We've done so much in 5 years. You helped me leave the fire department better than I found it in May of 1996. Thank you for being a great boss. To the Albany City Council, thank you for this proclamation and for recognizing the hard work of our fire department. Your commitment to public safety and to our community is deeply appreciated, and it has been an honor to serve the residents of Albany alongside such dedicated council members the last 30 years. Finally, to the entire community, our Albany community, thank you for placing your trust in us. Whether it's a structure fire, a medical emergency, or simply helping a neighbor, we are proud to be your fire department. From the bottom of my heart, thank you all. I will retire with a smile soon. And so many great memories. I'm truly blessed.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to come up and say a few words? Any members of the council?
Sure. My pleasure to know Jim for not a long time. I'm kind of surprised to be outlasting him, actually, as fire chief. He's making me feel old up here. I was chosen by the voters to serve in 2020, and there weren't very many things that terrified me, but one of them was Albany Hill. So as a geologist, I went up there and crawled around all up and down and over it because I was really worried about fire up there, and came away with some optimism because of how well the hill had been managed, which is courtesy of the Albany Fire Department and the other fire departments in the city. And then subsequently, there was one fire that was set on the hill by an arsonist, and I believe a second fire that was set by an arsonist. And the department managed those tremendously with no structural loss, no injuries, and I'm just so grateful and impressed, and I thank you so much all for your service.
I've had the pleasure of working with you in several events and throughout the community, and I'm just so sad that we're going to lose you. Yeah. It's been just a pleasure. You've run the department so well, and always with a smile on your face. You've always been so warm and welcoming, and I just have always appreciated your energy and your commitment to our community. So thank you so much, and don't be a stranger, hopefully.
And I'll add my thanks. Seems like we've worked together for a long time, not 30 years, but I count the pool days, maybe.
At least 25.
Oh, you make me feel old. Anyway, thank you. You know, you were one of the firemen that were at our house on some really bad days. You were with me at Alta Bates on some bad days, and I always remember that, and I'm always grateful. But, you know, you were there for good days, too, and I remember a lot of committee meetings we sat through, working on the State Policy Committee. And like people say, you know, roads go both ways, so just because you're taking the road out, you can come back. We'll expect to see you at pancake breakfast and other events. And with that, is there, oh, I'm sorry, John? Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to really thank Chief Boito for his leadership. And I think a lot of his leadership we often see, whether it's in events when he gets a chance to speak with us, when he's out in public, the leadership he's taken both in helping us address the danger on Albany Hill, working to help make sure that we're prepared as the San Pablo Avenue specific plan is built out, that we'll have a new fire truck. And even in the speaking of the fire trucks that we currently have, where you know, it's as a practitioner in urban design, one of the things we often work with is fire departments that have fire trucks that cannot make very tight turning radiuses. And Chief Boito's work to make sure that the fire trucks that he was providing the city of Albany could navigate the streets that we have today. And on a personal side, I would say that, you know, the chief has shared with me some of the cultural work that he's been doing in the fire department and building a culture of support within the fire department, knowing that firefighters have days that are extremely positive and days that can be very devastating, and knowing that our firehouse is a house that is a place that is open for our firefighters to talk about the good and the bad, to support each other in those moments. It's something that makes me really proud of our fire department and proud of the legacy that Chief Boito will leave in the culture of our fire department. And so with that, I just want to really express my thanks to the chief. And best luck in his fishing in the future.
There.
Hopefully it'll be catching. Thank you all for those comments. It means a lot. One of the reasons that I'm not just the years of service, but one of the reasons I'm comfortable making that next step into retirement is my successor is going to be amazing. So we have you're going to be left with someone who's his knowledge, skills, and abilities. He's going to take this department further than I feel I have, and I'm excited to see that. I will be back. Not the Arnold style, I'll be back, but I will be back to see everybody. This is my other family. So you don't spend 30 years somewhere and just vanish. At least I can't. So thank you all very much.
Well, thank you again.
Mayor, may I make a quick comment as
Please.
well? I just really want to recognize this moment. Jim's making me emotional, which isn't hard to do, but we share that energy. It has been so great with you in our leadership team, serving the department. You have transitioned your fire department into one that should be so proud of. Everything you've touched, you've just improved. So thank you for supporting me in my role and vice versa. And to your family, thank you for coming, sharing Jim with us all these years. It's truly been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Nicole. It's my pleasure.
And may we now have the city manager's report. I'll give you a minute there.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. Not quite as exciting, so. But some good updates for you all. As you can tell, Marin Paving Project has done really well despite the rains, and thank you to Public Works team for the constant work to ensure safety throughout this project. We're in the final traffic striping and signage stage with street lighting and traffic signal work, sidewalk repair, and also now cleanup. So really a major infrastructure improvement on this street, and we hope that the remaining work will be significantly less disruptive than it has been from time to time, so we're almost there. National Public Safety Telecommuters Week is April 12th through 18th. This is a National Public Safety Week honoring our 911 dispatchers as they carry some of the hardest work in responding to emergency calls. So appreciate our dispatch team so much for their professionalism and compassion in their service. Parks Master Plan community workshops and survey are ongoing. We've had engagement at many different levels within our community, which is, I really appreciate staff and the consultant team for being so thoughtful in the approach of how to get input from all park users. This includes the high school, also a community workshop, and staff meeting people in the parks as they're using the parks to get additional feedback. We've had about 600 responses to date on the survey, and it will remain active until the end of April. So please take the opportunity to provide your input. Also a reminder that the citywide garage sale is Saturday, May 2nd. You can sign up on our website for that event. And Friends of Albany Park cleanup is also on May 2nd. The cleanup will occur at 10 a.m. on the Ohlone Greenway at the corner of Masonic and Marin. This is held in partnership with the Rotary Club, and hope to see everyone there for that, as well as Movie in the Park. May is a busy month. On May 9th, this is a newer community tradition where we have a movie in the park. This year it will be The Greatest Showman. It starts at about sunset, which will be 8:20 p.m., so come watch a movie under the stars. A reminder of the Community Wildfire Resilience Workshop. It will be held on May 9th. This is session 1 of 4 workshops. It's funded through a grant from State Coastal Conservancy and is focused on reducing wildlife hazards, addressing climate change, stewarding natural areas, and reusing urban wood. This will be held again on May 9th from 10 to noon, and an opportunity to learn about native and invasive plants in the grasslands on the crest of Albany Hill and how they affect fire. And that completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any council questions, comments? Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll move to good of the city. It's the time for persons desiring to address the city council on an item that is not on the agenda. Please note city policy limits each speaker to up to 3 minutes. Mayor may reduce the time limit per speaker depending upon the number of speakers. The Brown Act limits the council's ability to take and/or discuss items that are not on the agenda. Therefore, such items may be referred to staff for comment or to a future agenda item. Comments related to items appearing on the agenda are taken up at the time the city council deliberates each action item. The mayor will announce when the period for public comment is open on each agenda item. Do we have any public comment in the room? Seeing none, is there any online?
Yes, we have 3. Oh, more than 3.
Okay. That did happen 10 minutes ago.
Am I supposed to speak now?
Yes, go ahead,
This
please.
is okay. Hi. Hello. My name is Melissa Getz, and I live in one of the over 800 condominiums in the 500 block of Pierce Street. I am here to ask you for your support to bring back a local bus to Pierce Street because my closest local bus stop is half a mile away. You can't see that I travel in a power wheelchair, so I want to point out that Half a mile in an electric wheelchair is a significant distance. I want to have local bus stops restored to Pierce Street so I can take a local bus to the El Cerrito Plaza BART station. At an AC Transit Board of Directors meeting, I saw that Oakland Unified subsidizes AC Transit so that students can be bused in Oakland to Montera Middle and Skyline High Schools. This tells me that AC Transit will accept money from outside sources to supplement their routes. I am asking the City of Albany to consider directing money to AC Transit to help pay for a local bus to go down Pierce Street. I crafted a proposal showing which bus stops I want to be reinstated and sent it to Director Sandhu, who oversees our ward at AC Transit. It shows how the 18 or 52 lines could be extended 2.5 miles from University Village down Pierce Street to end at the El Cerrito Plaza BART station. I need someone to email me, melissagets@gmail.com, to let me know where you want me to send you a copy of the proposal I sent to the AC Transit Director for our geographic location. Thank you for the opportunity to share my concerns with you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening, City Council, Mayor McQuaid. This is Nick Peterson, Albany Climate Action Coalition. At, I think it was a week ago, City Council meeting, I was encouraged to see that the City Council under Mayor McQuaid's recommendations created a subcommittee to look into expediting and making more efficient climate action with the City of Albany. So I wanted to just thank you for moving forward with that, and I look forward to hopefully interacting with the subcommittee and providing input on what Albany should be doing to move things along. I just wanted to also respond to, I think it was Councilmember Mickey, rightfully so, said there has been much accomplishment. But one thing I wanted to remind everybody is we've been working on this for 25 years, and you know, or at least 15 years from 2010, which was the first. So 15, 16 years, I'm sorry, not 20, 15, 16 years of effort. So we've done some good effort, but we need to do accelerated effort. The other thing I wanted to encourage the city is that we do pay quite a bit for police and fire, and those budgets should also incorporate certain actions that support climate action. It'd be nice if, you know, everybody was on board to be pursuing information and contacts that would help move each department along on their progress to reduce emissions in the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, good evening. This is Jean Wu, another member of the Albany Climate Action Coalition. I had an interesting discussion today with Lucinda Young, who I believe is going to be speaking after me, because she went to a meeting of mayors and what they have done in their cities. She pointed out that the Fremont mayor, not only do they have 3 firehouses that are resilient hubs with batteries and solar, they have a senior living center and a food pantry. And they have really embraced this full-fledged, and they've gone through it using the AVA community energy funding. And I'd really like to recommend that Albany think through how to create more than one even, a community-based resilience center, so that people in different parts of the city would not have to travel a long way, like this lady with the wheelchair, and find a place to go if there was a major fire, or if there was a tidal wave, or, you know, probably will be at some point, an earthquake, because any number of bad things could happen, and the only way to be prepared is to be prepared. The funding, as I pointed out, there is a mechanism for getting some funding, if not all of the funding, through either using the 30 to 40% federal tax credit, which still applies to municipalities, nonprofits, and commercial entities, and the AVA Community Energy funding, which is very significant and would help pay for the batteries. And so I was wondering if there's any chance that either the new, the old, or even an entire group of fire and police and city council members could meet with the mayor of Fremont and the fire chief, who's also very supportive, and learn how they dealt with it, what their questions were, and how they were answered, and how they were able to full-fledged go ahead and put in 5 resilience hubs in the city of Fremont, including 3 at fire stations. It's very impressive. Sausalito has done it. Palo Alto is doing it. I think Albany can do it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Yes, good evening. This is Lucinda Young, the Albany Climate Action Coalition. I want to first thank Committee Member Jordan for recognizing Earth Day. You may also all know that this is San Francisco Climate Week. And as Jean Wu just mentioned, as part of San Francisco Climate Week, I attended a conference, and one of the most impressive presentations was U.S. mayors advancing climate progress. And I heard inspiring presentations from the mayors of Fremont, Palo Alto, and Sausalito, a wide variety of cities of varying sizes and demographics. And they talked about how their cities are moving forward, cutting emissions and strengthening community resilience, and showing that meaningful progress happens locally, even in this environment where the federal government is doing what it can to retract climate action. As one of the mayors said, climate action is not a luxury good. It's about our security, our economy, our safety, and our health. And I mention that because I've heard not only from other members of the community, but also from staff and even city council, that climate action has got to take kind of a back seat because we've got so many other pressing matters, and that really misses the big picture. Since I don't have a lot of time, I just want to share that one of Fremont's highlights, as Jean Wu mentioned, is installation of solar and battery powered microgrids, resilience hubs at 3 fire stations, a senior housing facility, and a soup kitchen. And funding from AVA paid for those hubs. And I had the opportunity to talk with Fremont's mayor one-on-one after the presentation. And I inquired if staff or the fire department had any concerns about fire risk. He indicated absolutely not, that it was actually the fire captain that was the biggest driver for it. And when I shared with him that our staff and some city council member had cited fire risk from batteries as a reason not to proceed with a hub in Albany, he suggested that was based on misinformation, and he would be happy to talk to Mayor McQuaid or city council members and to connect his fire chief with ours. So I would ask Mayor McQuaid or Councilmember Jordan, members of our new climate subcommittee, to please reach out to Mayor Salwan, S-A-L-W-A-N, Salwan, and the fire captain. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is that it?
Hi there. I'm calling to support Melissa Getz's comment. I never met her before, but I appreciate her comment. I have friends who live on Pierce Street. I have friends whose elderly parents live on Pierce Street. My partner has lots of clients on Pierce Street, many of them older, and many of them just don't drive, and they depend on public transit. I know we had bus lines on Pierce Street and a line that went to El Cerrito Plaza. People depend on that for shopping, going to the plaza, in addition to Plaza Bart. I believe that was stopped during COVID. I could be wrong on the timing, but it was stopped, and that's essentially stranding a large portion of our population on Pier Street, families and all sorts of people who live there in those condos, hundreds or thousands of people. So please, I'm asking you to support Melissa Getz in her quest to connect Pier Street to El Cerrito Plaza and El Cerrito Plaza by bus again. I mean, we are always talking about climate action and we're talking about the active transportation plan, but public transit's also a large part of that too. So please support her and do what you can and reconnect that whole section of Albany. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Well, thank you. Jeff, do you have any response to anything?
No, Mayor, I do appreciate Ms. Getz providing her email, and I will communicate with her directly.
Great, thank you. That brings us to the consent calendar. Consent calendar items are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. By approval of the consent calendar, the staff recommendations will be adopted unless otherwise modified by the City Council. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member of the audience requests removal of an item from the consent calendar. Any member of the council wish to pull an item?
9 and 10, please.
I'm sorry, 9 and 10?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Mickey, are you okay? Any member of the public wish to pull an item?
I don't have any hands raised.
All right, Councilmember Jordan, would you go ahead?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, on item 9, I appreciated the report of the mutual aid usage by the El Cerrito Police Department of its drone to survey the area ahead of the Solano Avenue stroll last year. And I do recall that receiving some comments from various people by email who noticed the drone and kind of wonder what was going on. Some of them were expressing concern about the drone looking at their property and whatnot. So I just thought this was an opportunity for the police department to say more about the usage of the drone in that situation, what kind of information was of interest, what might be actionable about that information, and so on and so forth. Thank you. And welcome.
And good evening, Mayor and Council, City Manager and staff, members of the public. Greg Galliano, your police chief. Happy to answer what I can about that. So yes, during the, before the stroll, the police department had requested El Cerrito to utilize drones to fly over the stroll location. This is a part of a larger concerted effort to ensure the safety of this location, given the large volume of people expected after the sweep. Not only were there drone usage, but with this, you also see officers sweeping the location to ensure there's no nefarious devices and explosive ordnance detection dogs also sweeping the area. The idea being, with a multifaceted approach, we can ensure there are no bad actors who are planning to take advantage of the large volume of the public attending this event. And with the drones, these are heavily regulated by the FAA and a variety of evolving case laws which restrict where the drone can and cannot fly. The intent being, as you would see with any large-scale event such as this, is to provide what's known as overwatch. And overwatch is a concept where law enforcement or public safety will survey the skyline or elevated locations surrounding a large-scale event or an event where there's some form of safety concern, which we would have with the stroll of an event of this magnitude. Overwatch ensures that we can verify there's no bad actors hiding in an elevated position and gives law enforcement an ability to respond to that, as well as a overarching view downward on an event of that size. What would not be permitted would be to use a drone to fly into a place where the officers don't have a lawful right to be, which would be a person's yard or through a window. The intent is to overwatch the business district where the stroll is anticipated to take place.
Thank you very much. I was going to ask, well, I mentioned actionable information. You intimated various scenarios, so I think that answered that question. I appreciate that. If I understood the report correctly, it indicated the drone was used in advance of the stroll. Was it used during the stroll as well, or?
It was not used during the stroll. It was used in advance of the stroll with the explosive ordnance device sweep as well as the officer sweep.
Yeah. I guess what you relayed makes me think during the stroll, I know it could be consternating, but I know there was an event in another part of the country where having Overwatch during the event would have been useful. So anyway, I thank you for the information. That's all I have on that, Mayor.
Okay.
And yeah. So this regards the Brighton sewer the replacement, not rehabilitation. I just want to take the opportunity to thank staff for securing a bid that's more than 1/4 below the engineer's estimate, which is remarkable. And to put it in numbers, it's about $1.4 million less than the engineer's estimate. So that's a great savings that can go towards further advancing our sewer rehabilitation program. And also it appears by the resolution that staff has put before us and recommended that it moves the construction date up a little bit. So I just want to recognize that and appreciate staff for both those accomplishments.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Could I get a motion?
I will move the consent calendar.
I'll second.
May we have a roll call, please?
Vice Mayor Hanson Romero,
Yes.
Mayor McQuaid,
Yes.
Councilmember Jordan,
Yes.
and Councilmember Lopez is absent. Councilmember Mickey,
Yes.
and the motion carries.
Thank you. And that brings us to presentation, active transportation plan update, phase 3, project and program priorities. And while you're getting organized, I'll just say that the staff recommendation is that the council receive a presentation on the draft project and program priorities prepared as part of the active transportation plan and provide feedback to staff.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Excited to bring you an update on the active transportation planning tonight. Next slide, please. So tonight we'll provide a recap of the work that's happened since your last discussion of this in October of last year, I believe. We'll walk through, show the revised active transportation networks following that discussion, and then we'll walk through the project identification and prioritization process that we've been underway since then. And then we'll discuss next steps. So what we've been up to since last we spoke, the last presentation you had was on those draft active transportation networks, the second phase of the project, and we've been developing the policies and priority projects since then through the winter and spring. And we also had a Transportation Commission discussion regarding the analysis for Solano Avenue that we'll discuss in a little bit. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we've really been diving deep into looking at all of the projects that would be bringing the active transportation network that was identified last phase up to the standards that were discussed. And so with that, we generated a list of projects. We had a discussion with our technical advisory committee on that, had a public open house in January, as well as an online comment period, and in February, a discussion at the Transportation Commission. And we're bringing this material to you tonight. So briefly, the active transportation networks, these were provided in the staff report to council. They mainly reflect the discussion from the council meeting and the comments that we received then, and should reflect all of that feedback we've gotten. And then on the biking and rolling network, similarly, the updates were made reflecting those comments, and in particular here, the other change is reflecting the Transportation Commission recommendation to include Solano Avenue east of San Pablo on the on-street bikeways network. The commission did review the analysis of the concept as directed by council that the consultants and staff develop, and the results of that were really in line with the one block estimate in terms of the parking impact that was provided to council back in May of last year. And it did identify a number of additional questions and issues that would need to be further analyzed and developed as part of project development and design work. And that recommendation from commission is also reflected in the project list and project description. And with that, I'll hand it over to our consultants to walk through the process for identifying all the projects.
Thank you, Justin. Members of the council, thank you. I feel like I know you all now. I've been up here many times, and we're nearing the home stretch on the project, and glad to have you here, and thanks for hosting us. My name is Pete Riccitti. I'm a project manager for Parametrics. I'm joined by Sharon Yavarma, who's one of our project planners who's been on the project the whole time, and has a lot of technical knowledge of some of the projects and everything. So if some of those things come up, we as a team, I think, can answer hopefully any of your questions. I was hoping that the whole crowd was here for our item, but everybody left. And then I noticed as Justin and I were splitting up the speaking parts, I kind of gave myself the driest slide of the whole deck, and I should have made a flow chart or something for this, but hopefully this is relatively simple because this covers things that we've done in previous meetings, so it's a bit of a refresher as well. This was the process that we went through to turn those network maps into actual projects that you're going to see tonight on project lists, and they're also in your packet as well. The first thing we did was we looked at the networks and we developed a comprehensive database, essentially a fancy Excel spreadsheet of every block and every intersection on those networks that you saw on the previous slides. And then we looked at what was out there. And I guess kind of as an interim step in there, we also at the last meeting talked about network quality standards, or what we're really calling quality guidelines, because we don't want to necessarily give them the legally binding weight of standards, but network quality guidelines, which are set by NACTO and AASHTO and various acronyms that define the best practices in this field. So we looked at what was out there, and for every block and every intersection, we said, does this meet the standard that we're going for on these networks? And so that's really step 2. And the result of that was kind of what you see in step 3, where we were able to identify gaps, corridors, and intersections that do not currently meet those standards. So that was really kind of our baseline. Some of the lines on that map, the city has a very good biking and pedestrian network already, so some of the streets already met standards, and not everything's perfect, but maybe only needed a little bit of tweaks, and some of them were pretty substantial gaps where we said, okay, we really need to bring this up to standard. And so that's really what kind of became our project list. So then for each corridor where it did not meet the standards, we looked at potential projects that could get it up to the level of the guidelines. In some cases, there's multiple ways to meet that. And so we tried to identify multiple options where we could, but also to keep things simple. And we're going to see a map in a few slides that goes over kind of some of the streets where there's multiple ways to achieve the standard. And then because we had a pretty big database that was hundreds and hundreds of blocks, we tried to consolidate that into a more simple project list. Right now it's organized by corridor or by specific location. As we get into defining projects, kind of more into the implementation phase, the city council or staff may recommend combining a couple or slicing and dicing them differently or changing the start or end points to overlap with other work. But at this level, we didn't want to make things super complicated, so we wanted to just keep things into corridor level or spot locations where we could. So hopefully I explained that relatively well, and again, I apologize there's not a flow chart or a graphic or something, but let's get to some of the results. If we can go to the next slide, please. So then, I guess we didn't get the results yet. We have one more slide, I'm sorry. Then we looked at all of the different projects that were in the project list of all the areas, all the corridors in the city that don't meet the standards that we want, and we tried to prioritize them. So using the goals that we established at the beginning of the project, we tried to develop some simple criteria, the 3 columns, the 3 boxes that you see here, to analyze and prioritize the projects. So a high priority project would meet these types of criteria. First, under access and connectivity, it would close a substantial gap in the network, especially one that's likely to have higher user demand. or it would improve the capacity of a high-demand facility. So think like the Albany Greenway and the desire to widen that to account for lots of demand and lots of different modes and speeds. Under the safety and comfort criterion, we looked at anywhere where it would significantly improve a substandard facility, anywhere where the existing comfort rating for bikes is low. And if you recall from the beginning of the project, we went through a pretty substantial exercise where we evaluated the comfort rating of all the streets in the city, and we asked the community and you all for lots of feedback on that. Or a street or block where there was a high rate of collision or other safety data there. And then finally, we of course wanted to weigh the input of all of the stakeholders, so we talked to the community through an outreach process that Justin summarized that had an online meeting, or sorry, an in-person meeting and an online component that was open for about 4 weeks. And then we also talked to the TC last month as well and got their, I guess it was at the end of February, and got their recommendations. So we had a whole list of projects of all the streets and blocks in the city that don't meet the standards. And then now we wanted to try to prioritize those to help the council kind of get their arms around all those different blocks and what really we wanted to slot first to be implemented next. To simplify the review a little bit, we grouped things into pedestrian and trail projects. And I would note that trail in this case includes multi-use trails, so the Greenway was on that list, and then a list of biking and rolling projects. Again, just to allow the community to kind of compartmentalize things a little bit easier. And so now I think we get to some of the results. If we can go to the next slide. So this just shows the input we got from the community. And again, that's just one of 3 criteria that we use to prioritize, but we wanted to kind of show you some of the raw data that came out of the online and in-person engagement. Note over on the right, the number of votes that we got was only 588. So it was a pretty good sample for a planning study, but certainly not a scientific survey, a scientific sample of the whole city. But what we looked at, and we had asked people, we gave them the whole project list for the pedestrian and trail projects. It was about 30 projects or so, to evaluate what they thought was the highest priority. And we had everybody rank kind of a top 3, 1, 2, 3. So the shading and the color of the bars is first rank, second rank, and third rank. And we looked at the total of the projects that got top 3 votes. And here you can see the results. And really kind of some of the key here is that the community priorities really focused on the major corridors, the Greenway and the Bay Trail, Solano, and some of the school access projects. So some of those major corridors are really what emerged out of that. And again, this is just one of 3 criteria, and it's a relatively small sample, but we wanted to show you this data. And then for the next slide, we look at the biking and rolling projects. 535 responses there, and you can see again, the major corridors really are the ones that garnered the most votes. Again, this was just one of 3 different criteria we used, and it's also informed by access and connectivity and safety and comfort as well. So if we go to the next slide. Finally, we get to some of the results, and this stuff is in your packet, and there's a full project list in your packet, but we wanted to kind of summarize what we think are kind of some of the key buckets, if you will, in terms of the projects that might be up next for the City Council to prioritize, or at least kind of what a priority project means are the ones that we think might be up next. And we're looking for your input on whether you would move some of these projects up or down or off the list. And we definitely want to share the input that we got from the TC on that as well. So the first bucket really is kind of a separate group and is provided for context. You can see in the parentheses, it says not part of the ATP. These are projects that are already in motion. They're fully funded and they're in progress. And so this is just to kind of provide context on things that are already going as we start to look at a little bit more to the future to the priority projects under development. These are projects that are identified through the planning process as corridors and blocks that don't meet the desired standard, but there already is a project that's in progress moving forward in some way, either it's in design or in advanced planning or seeking funding to get underway. And then the third bucket there is priority projects, again, ones that kind of came to the top of the list in terms of all those criteria, but that have not yet been formally initiated in a meaningful way. So we're going to look at some of those buckets, and again, this is a draft list, and we're looking for your input on what some of the priority projects might be. So we go to the next slide, please. That first small bucket of fully funded and in progress, again, just for context, Marin Avenue paving project, I think we actually talked about this earlier tonight. Jackson Bikeway, and the Cleveland Cycle Track. Again, those are provided mostly for context. They're not really part of the ATP because they're already going. So by the time the ATP is adopted and published and the staff is ready to start working on projects, hopefully these will be already far enough along that they won't be part of that. But I think Justin or staff could provide more details on those if you have questions. The second bucket is the priority projects that emerged from our list, but that already happen to be under development in some way. And so you can see those are sorted with the pedestrian projects first, the biking rolling projects second, and the multi-use pass third, and then they're just in alphabetical order. So this isn't meant to imply any sort of priority order within this. These all scored very high. And kind of at this level, our goal is not to kind of split hairs on the scoring and this gets 6.3 points and this gets 7.2 or whatever. They all scored relatively high. And at this point, it's really kind of a matter of judgment and input on what the council would like to elevate and advance. So that is the list of those projects. I'll spare you from me going through and reading all of them. And then next we have a bucket of, I think it's 14 projects, 16 projects that are also scored very high, but have not yet been initiated in terms of kind of formal design or things like that. There have been, I think, a little bit of planning study on some of these, but in terms of kind of the formal process of project development, these have not yet been initiated. And then to hopefully add a little bit of color, we've got some maps of these too, and that hopefully will help the dryness of some of these tables. If we can go to the next slide. So here's is a summary map of under the pedestrian category of the priority projects that emerged. And so kind of taking it out of a list and seeing it in the city and what this looks like. You can see a couple sidewalk gaps, a couple high priority pedestrian corridors, ADA curb ramps and streetscape improvements on Solano. Notably, those are two separate projects. The curb ramps is a more near-term thing. The streetscape improvements is what I think we've met several times about before and are probably going to discuss tonight. You can see Pierce Street on there as well. Not only was it a transit corridor, but it is also a ped corridor, and there's a bit of a parking issue there. A lot of cars park on the sidewalk, and so it's a very constrained corridor. So you can see the map of the pedestrian priority projects, and if we go to the next slide. The multimodal trails, again, those are things for pedestrians and for biking and rolling. And then also the schools, just to kind of consolidate into fewer maps. And you can see the Bay Trail, the Greenway, the new Cleveland Pierce path, and then school projects as well. And then finally, the priority projects for biking and rolling. And you can see there Adams and Keynes, Marin, Solano, and Key Route are some of the major ones there, as well as a couple connections you can see up at the north end of the city, the connection to El Cerrito near Carlson Boulevard. And then one other one that I wanted to point out just to kind of clarify that San Pablo Avenue cycle track and Marin intersection, so that doesn't get muddled with the larger efforts on San Pablo, which is more of a regional project for a bikeway up and down the entire corridor. That is a smaller project to complete the segment of cycle track that's just along kind of from the city limit to the north up to Marin Avenue and work on the Marin-San Pablo intersection. So again, just to make that distinct from the larger San Pablo corridor. And if we go to the next slide, okay, this map, and I swear we're almost done with my part, thank you for bearing with me. We thought that this map would be very helpful because this kind of gets into some of the facility recommendations, and we didn't want to be too prescriptive, but we did want to put some meat on the bones in terms of what are the types of biking and rolling facilities that would be envisioned that would meet the standards for the network. And so you can see, it's a little bit of a complicated map, but if you zoom in on any given street, you can kind of see what the bikeway facility type would be that would meet the standards. And that second bullet there with the kind of gray shading, some corridors say multiple options. These are ones where there truly are multiple options to meet the standard. And in many cases, that involves a trade-off often between protected bikeways, which may have an impact on parking or the lane width of the roads, versus really strong bike boulevard type treatments that could really do a lot of traffic calming to bring traffic down below 20 miles an hour and volumes below 3,000. So either keeping it as a shared facility where we do a lot of traffic calming to really bring speed and volume down, or building a more protected facility, but that may have impacts on things like parking. So that's what you see in those kind of gray, I think there's 6 gray corridors. where we didn't want to be too prescriptive at this point. Definitely further study and outreach at the kind of block level, the neighborhood level, would be involved in making project decisions for those corridors. Okay, I'll pause right there, and we'll go to the programs. Pivoting gears a little bit, the programs are a little bit simpler, but in addition to the physical infrastructure to help achieve the goals of the network itself, but also the goals and policies of the active transportation plan, we developed 12 different programs, again, through input from staff and from the various stakeholders. These were also looked at by the public. What you see, this great picture, is the board that we showed, which really helps to summarize everything in a kind of a nice tight package. But since we showed that board, we went to the TC and they asked us to add an additional program for railroad safety. And then there's one other on here that we had discussed but didn't make it on the list yet, but is about micromobility safety as well. And I think that's something we might discuss in terms of creating a program for that. So that's separate from the one on the bottom, bike share and micromobility, is about establishing like a program to share or to provide use of those types of devices, whereas a safety program would be more about looking at rules and regulations and policies to ensure speeds and ages and things like that for the safe use of those items. And so we went through a little more simple, but a similar prioritization process. And the goal there would be these would be treated very similar to the physical projects. Staff would take the most popular programs, the ones that the city council and the community determined were the highest priority, and they would spend some staff time on working on establishing those. So those may look like a new study to be done, a city ordinance, a partnership with other partner agencies, things like that, that also, like a project, would also take staff time to be able to develop and to implement. So if you go to the next slide. For the programs, because it's a little bit harder to evaluate things like access and safety and comfort, because it's not a physical project, we took a more simple view of just the overall benefit to the program in achieving ATP goals. So again, not just the overall benefit, but the benefit to achieving the goals of this document. The cost in terms of implementation and operation and maintenance, and then again, community and TC input. And if you go to the next slide, here's a similar graph showing how those ranked. We can see, I actually think if we go to the next slide, it'll show the kind of priorities that came out of it. Very similar to what we heard from the community. The kind of top four, I guess I would say, is lighting, which builds upon the city lighting evaluation that was done in 2024. Pedestrian visibility, railroad safety, again, that was added by the TC recommendation, speed management and enforcement, specifically to update traffic calming and speed management through a proactive process as opposed to kind of a request-based process. And then finally, again, we might, under discussion, is a micromobility safety program as well. And we have a little bit of that drafted, but that didn't make it into this list in time. And I think I was going to turn over to Justin right here to address some of the program stuff as well. Do you want them to go back to the last slide, Justin? I apologize.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. So I was just going to note we got receiving some feedback and making sure we adequately reflect the Transportation Commission discussion for your deliberation and consideration tonight. Pete already mentioned there was discussion of micromobility program. We had just drafted it as policy language, but there was discussion of adding it as a program to be listed. And then the other one was the top priority programs when we presented to the Transportation Commission also included an intersection treatment guidelines program that we bumped off because others came on, but that wasn't actually part of the commission discussion that we should be removing one. So wanted to make sure that that was on the consideration for your discussion tonight as well. That one was also somewhat more of a tool for staff versus a program in some ways. So it was a little bit different, and we weren't sure it needed to be listed as a priority program. So that was part of the rationale that we used when we received that feedback, but wanted to be clear on the commission discussion and direction. With that, I'll just briefly mention next steps, which are essentially once we have the discussion tonight, we'll be pivoting to really preparing the plan document, reflecting all three of the phases and packaging that and bringing that for public review and then city council consideration for adoption. And with that, we're available to answer questions.
Are there council questions?
I had questions. I want to thank staff for answering so many questions that I sent this morning. I apologize I was late. It was remarkable that you got to all of them, so thank you for doing that.
Councilmember Mickey, I see your hand.
Thank you, Mayor McQuaid. I had a question. So just on the list, there's pedestrian improvements for Garfield and the Ohlone Greenway. So I assume that means Garfield, Masonic, Ohlone Greenway. And just wanted to check if any considerations had been also considered for bicycle improvements there. So if we're going to be connecting a pedestrian crosswalk and then a sidewalk from Masonic to the Ohlone Greenway, are we also looking to make that bicycle accessible as well?
Yeah, thank you for the question. That could be part of a potential smaller project. One of the reasons we thought that it was worth calling this out is it was identified in the prior ATP, and being part of a larger Ohlone Greenway expansion project probably means it's a longer duration thing than it necessarily needs to be. And since the direction was to really focus on gap closures, it's really the lens on prioritizing it is the pedestrian gap, but Garfield, is a street that a cyclist could ride on and could be using to access the Greenway as well. So that could be part of project scope.
Perfect, thank you. I just worry that if we were to put in a purely pedestrian crossing, that bicyclists might use it anyways. And so just make sure that we take into account that bicyclists may be trying to use that intersection as well. And so just make sure we design it to function for both.
Thank you for your.
Sorry, and that was it for my questions.
Okay. So I have several questions. And again, I want to thank staff for answering all my questions today. Hopefully some were the same as Councilmember Jordan, so you didn't have to do double work. And I'm going to sort of jump around a little bit, but thinking about programs, sitting here, it sort of occurred to me, as we start looking at e-bikes holistically, even on a statewide level, could e-bike regulation, for lack of a better term, be a program?
If e-bike behavior or safety or whatever the direction is a program, one element of that would be to look into what at the city level we could do in terms of setting speeds and encouraging safe speeds on our shared facilities.
I guess my question is, does it make sense to take that approach, or does it make sense to have e-bikes as a standalone, not at all part of this?
Just to clarify the question, to consider it as part of the other speed management program more broadly, or
just as
calling out?
Thinking about e-bikes just as a standalone, how do we deal with them? Or does it make sense to weave them into the active transportation plan as a program?
I think the component that has come up as the concern and discussion at Transportation Commission, most of the comments have been around faster speed capable vehicles on our shared facilities and risk or hazard to pedestrians. So that I'd say is a little distinct from more state-focused regulation of vehicles themselves and capability. So I think there probably are some components we could be looking at for our local shared use paths and trails that isn't really stepping into some of the state regulation discussion.
And sort of along the same thought, most of these kind of popped into my head sitting here tonight, so they're not real well thought out. Would accessibility be a program? It seems like there's several places where that's kind of the driving force, maybe on the Hill, Pierce Street, whatever, that the concern really is accessibility. And could that be a program, kind of give it a place to live? And it sort of lifts it up as to becoming more credible. Does that make sense?
To the extent that it would be driving capital projects, I think it makes sense to keep it as how we are prioritizing our projects. If it is more programmatic elements of accessibility that aren't leading to capital projects, that's the distinction I would make. If it's really talking more about how we are prioritizing what our improvements are, I think it makes sense to set that as active transportation priorities so that we have one funnel of these kinds of projects and which we're choosing to work on as a higher priority or to work on first. But there are components of accessibility requirements that maybe are not capital project based. We have the sidewalk shaving program. We have things we do that are improving accessible path of travel separate.
Okay. Could you describe a key route bikeway, what you're envisioning there?
So that is one of the projects. If you can go to the slide, if you can go back to the one called biking and rolling facilities, it should be toward the end of the presentation. Thank you. I think if you go up to slide 20 right there. Yeah, thank you. So that is one of our more challenging corridors. The good thing about that corridor is there's a lot of width, so there's a lot of room there to do a number of different solutions, but there also are a lot of uses there that the community feels strongly about, including the parking and the median. So I think I can check the full project list. I think we identified a few different potential options, but again, at this level, because we weren't really doing corridor-specific outreach, especially because it seemed to be a corridor with a lot of strong opinions. We didn't want to be too prescriptive. So I think we identified a couple different options, but nothing super well-defined. And I don't have the formal project list in front of me. The one in your packet has kind of a brief description. We have a more technical project list that has more bullets and a lot of different things. So, Justin, we may need to check that, but I believe our kind of overall take there is that it definitely requires further study and will probably be one of the more kind of hotly discussed corridors in the city.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that there hadn't been a decision made and I'd somewhere missed it.
No, I would say key route is distinct from many of the other that have multiple options that you could envision reducing the volumes down. This is probably one that may not be feasible, and so having it on the all ages and abilities higher comfort list does mean that the design options we'd be looking would be to provide bike separation. I think the area that we have some more room beyond prior design options was if this was more of a active transportation project and that versus trying to figure out how to add a facility as part of a resurfacing of the roadway project, is we have more options that we can look into because we're not tied to just the existing road surface.
Okay, and I think there were a couple of places where it talked about cars parking on the sidewalk. I think we did a good job on Washington after many years of discussion, making it not perfect, but it works. And I'm just curious if there's a way to look at your street in that way. And I think it's Cleveland talks about that too. I'm not sure where on Cleveland there's a parking on the sidewalk, but it's not important. Just as I guess to make it a question, is there a way we could look at it that way?
We would need to look at it as part of a project development, but my understanding is that accessibility guidance has gotten more prescriptive and more specific, and removing what's currently a path of travel that people block may not be an option for future projects as much as we've done in the past.
Okay, thank you. And then just my last thought is about Solano. And if we were not to do the cycle track at this point, what could we be doing?
I think a streetscape project would still be recommended, so it would be a matter of discussing what elements were part of the streetscape project. But the scope that we've identified includes crossing improvements, includes sidewalk improvements and accessibility improvements, accessible parking for the district, lighting, landscaping, drainage. It's a suite of components.
And would that be part of, there's the ADA component that we're pushing for time. Would that be part of that? Would that become one great big project?
No, I think no matter what direction we have on bike facilities on Solano, delivering the accessible curb ramps is going to be a quicker time frame than one that addresses the larger suite of components.
Great, thank you. Okay, we can move to public comment. The comment was in the room. Please.
Hi, my name's Carrie Schulman, longtime caller, first time in person. My children attend Albany Middle School and Ocean View Elementary, and active transportation is very important to us. First of all, thank you to everyone who has worked on this ATP. I appreciate the thoroughness and level of detail that you included in this project. These improvements are really exciting. It's like just dreamy thinking of all of the amazing things we can do in Albany. I just have two changes that I want to request. One, move Uptown Solano Bikeway to priority number 1. The Transportation Commission has already discussed this at length and agreed to move forward with it. So I'm not sure why this wasn't listed as already under development and why it's not ranked in group number 1. And then the second thing, to change the Key Route Bikeway to be a bicycle and pedestrian improvement that adds median stop signs at all the crossings. Key Route has a high level of foot traffic to and from the high school, and it should be prioritized. The Key Route pedestrian corridor received a total score of 6, and it makes sense to add this at the same time that the bikeway is added. So in summary, please move Solano Bikeway up to priority number 1 and add pedestrian improvements to the Key Route Bikeway. Thank you for considering those changes.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Ken McCroskey, and joining the thanks to the consultants and staff for developing this work over the last year plus. And a lot of good work. I have statistics and more information on why a rail safety project should be included, but you can ask me questions about that outside of my time. For now, I want to go a little higher level. I've often been asked, what do bicyclists want? And I've been thinking about this a lot and trying to verbalize what I want, why being able to cycle everywhere is important to me in my daily life. And it really relates to the pace of life, about spending too much on screens, too much time on screens. I recently considered the work of Henry David Thoreau, and I'm no great philosopher, but he lived a conscious life and encouraged others to make conscious decisions. And he encouraged people, when they lost their connection to the world, that they go find their cabin in the woods and their way to connect to the world around them in a personal way and find their way through that. And I really think that I've found my cabin here in Albany through being on the streets, walking and rolling, through being active in community engagement. And heck, I want that for everybody. I want everybody to be able to make that choice, all ages and abilities. I and other advocates are looking for safer cycling and walking routes in Albany and beyond. And it's not just the terrestrial benefits, it's the personal benefits for every individual so that they can make a choice to be active in their environment, their city, or the cities that they live in through that connection with the built environment. Whether that's running an errand on Solano or trying to get to Emeryville to get my tux shirt fitted in a reasonable amount of time on my bike while still getting exercising, even though I'm exacerbating my allergies. I mean, it's all in there, right? We all make choices. And I want everybody to be able to make those choices safely. Thank you.
Thank you. Online, please.
Hi, this is Catherine. I want to say again, thanks for the many years of thoughtful work on this project. Really appreciate your dedication here. Wanted to mention that as the mom of a toddler, I like biking everywhere with her to the grocery store or wherever errands, including on Solano as well as nearby streets like the Lonely Greenway to get where we want to go. And part of the reason why I like living in Albany is because it is so walkable and bikeable. And I don't live in the suburbs, it's car-centric because I want to be able to burn fat, not oil, when I get around. So encourage you to prioritize Upper Solano bike paths. Also want to mention that while access to Marin and Ocean View intersections have gotten some investment, by comparison, Cornell Elementary has had a lot less investment, and the middle school and high school have had almost none, in that it's probably worth considering thinking about the safe routes to school as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, my name is Melissa Getz, and I live in the 500 block of Pierce Street. I brought this concern up at a previous City of Albany meeting, but I want to mention it again tonight. Approximately 10% of Albany lives on the 500 block of Pierce Street. It is not the same location or concern as the Cleveland Pierce Street path, nor is it South Pierce Street. I know it is too late for this entire process to be redone to include the 500 block of Pierce Street, but I wanted to mention our exclusion anyway. There is a green line going by us, but I still think we were excluded. None of the stated projects specifically addresses the 500 block of Pierce Street. I don't know if this is the time to mention how unsafe it is to cross Pierce Street, or for us to take advantage of the gorgeous, smooth sidewalk on the other side of Pierce Street, opposite the residences. We have to cross Pierce Street twice. Once to get on the smooth sidewalk and a second time to get back to the side of the street that has businesses such as the Pacific East Mall. I don't think extending that sidewalk on the far side of Pierce Street is still a consideration. And from what I could decipher on the maps, getting the land from Caltrans to extend that segment is no longer a possibility. I have lived on Pierce Street or adjacent to it for nearly 30 years. I don't remember all of the ideas and when they were implemented, but safe and smooth transit from the 500 block of Pierce Street has always been unsatisfactory. By the way, until you convince people in the houses across from Peggy Thompson Park to give up their front yards, I don't think we will ever get cars off that sidewalk. I'm impressed that you got it done on Washington Avenue because I used to live there. I used to live at 810 Washington. And I used to, anyway, you don't need to hear me talk about that, but good luck with all of your ideas. Thank you for giving me a moment to speak again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brian Martin. I live on the 600 block of Adams Street near the bowling alley, and I did want to make sure that the City Council think not just about what's happening today in the city, but given that this is a document that may last for a decade or more, to to guide the city's efforts that think about the future of Albany, which includes the city's housing element and the San Pablo Avenue specific plan and the zoning on Solano and the Albany Bowl housing project that's already been approved, which is to say that all of those allow for dense construction and required no parking to be provided for any of them. And on San Pablo Avenue, between 9 to 12 stories can be built by right these days, again, with no parking required. So what that means to me is that, and hopefully to you, is that particularly if this bowling alley project takes off sooner than later, then we'll have hundreds of new homes right there, half a block from my house, and fewer than one parking space per home. And how are these people going to get around? And how are the people who live near them going to be impacted by people who are looking to park cars and potentially hundreds of cars that don't have a place to go? So, please do what you can for example, on Adams Keynes Bikeway, to find to prioritize places that will allow for people to get around with fewer or no cars, and to improve crossings on San Pablo, which is still a state highway with 7 lanes that people have to cross. And then also on Solano, people with 1600 Solano people, some of the concerns there were that there wasn't enough parking and it was going to impact people in that area. Every time something comes up like this, a dense project, there's going to be concerns about, well, how are people going to get around without cars? And so the city needs to have an answer for the next decade, and this document hopefully has it. The other thing I wanted to advocate for is for the Hillside neighborhood. And I sent an email earlier, you may have seen, in a photograph showing somebody pushing their kid in a stroller in the street because there's a complete lack of sidewalks in places, or no curb cuts or things blocking the sidewalks. And so that basic fundamental infrastructure needs to be addressed as a high priority in this project. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah, good evening. This is Nick Peterson. I live on Peralta. I'm a member of the Albany Climate Action Coalition. And, as an active transportation plan to encourage and make more safe and desirable methods of active transportation throughout Albany, one of the most significant strategies is biking and walking are prioritized. And cars and parking, not that they're not considered at all, but they're not active transportation. So it's important that there's a recognized balance between those two. And because our society, people have become so used to being able to drive and park wherever they want, especially in Albany with its free parking anywhere, it's always going to be contested when you impact the ability of people to drive or feel like they have primary right of the road when they drive their car. So I really encourage that the active transportation plan, which is endeavoring, as Brian Martin was pointing out, put forward policy that will shape our community and our transportation modes over the next few years, that we're going to move away. We need to move away from passenger vehicles, cars, especially single passenger cars, driving on the road, polluting our environment, wielding thousands of pounds of metal and steel around, potentially killing people as they try to walk across streets or ride their bikes. So I think it's important with that to ensure that on Solano Avenue, there's a priority for bicycle use also, which it sounds like the current approach is, if I understood the response to Peggy McQuaid's question about what was being done on Upper Solano, it sounds like we're saying nothing for bicycles. And that's just untenable. So I support the uphill bicycle track, protected bicycle track, and the readjustment of the parking in accordance with that. You don't lose parking spaces, although it does change the configuration. So it's a good approach. It'll allow cyclists to be on Solano included as part of active transportation. Now, the other thing I'd like to mention really quickly about this phobia of electric bikes, let's just put speed limits, 15 miles per hour on dedicated bikeways and 25 miles per hour on bike lanes. And leave it at that. If you want to go faster, go on a street. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi. So in the big picture, Albany's ATP is crucial to meeting our climate action adaptation plan goals, which hasn't really been mentioned, to reduce greenhouse gases by reducing motor vehicle miles traveled. And only when people of all ages and abilities can comfortably and safely walk and bike and roll to their destinations will many of them leave their cars behind and choose active transportation. We need to give them a robust network, connect destinations in and outside of Albany. I'm a senior, an old and getting older lady who depends on my feet and my bike to get where I'm going. That includes shopping, dining out, doing my business. A lot of that's done in Solano and San Pablo. I'm not getting faster or stronger, so I definitely feel safer with separated facilities. If you've been to Alameda, Oakland, Rockridge, Berkeley, they all have bike facilities in their business district. We don't. We really need to have complete streets too, and that means a bike lane in some way. Even partial bike facilities on Solano Avenue, which is our main street, as in this plan, will help. So all the families that you see all the time riding on long tails with kids to get a snack or to shop or to get their yogurt or whatever, they need to be accommodated. If you want to keep them off the sidewalks, as we all do, you have to give them somewhere to ride. So the Uptown Solano Avenue streetscape, pedestrian and bike rolling combination, that's been considered a priority by the public and by the Transportation Commission. So let's move this forward. As far as Keynes Avenue, I've lived on the 900 block of Keynes for more than 30 years. I speak to residents of my block and others all the time. It's a fallacy that they don't use the existing bikeway or the two-way car exit. They do. I see it literally every day. The main problems, as neighbors have said and written in letters to you, is that there's inadequate signing for entering drivers to understand that cars may be approaching. There's either no signage or it's blocked by trees like at the corner of Solano. It's not worth prioritizing a big unfunded change for something that's working okay. It can be improved, some decent signage, adding a couple mini roundabouts to slow traffic. Those work in Berkeley and they work well. No need to reinvent the wheel and spend a lot of money. Same goes for Adams. It's safer than previously. Last I'll mention, for north-south travel, the Ohlone Greenway needs to be modernized. So many e-bikes and scooters, the designs become outdated from when we did the configuration 10, 15 years ago. All users need more room, safer conditions, ASAP. That'll solve the e-bike issue with people being able to go fast. Widen the paths, better separate the modes. That's what'll make it safer for everybody. It's the highest rated by the public because everybody uses it. It's also the main north-south active transportation thoroughfare for Alameda and Contra Costa counties and serves everybody every day.
Thank you for your comments.
Drivers. Thank you.
Good evening. This is Lucinda Young, member of the Albany Climate Action Coalition, and I want to echo that a major goal of our climate action adaptation plan includes reduction of vehicle miles traveled. And we recently had a report from our climate action committee and staff on how we're doing on our goals. And we are behind on reducing vehicle miles traveled. And we really need to work on that. That's not going to happen unless we have safe bike and pedestrian routes. So I just want to emphasize the climate importance of this plan. And I also want to echo that Uptown Solano Bikeway needs to be a top priority. Solano needs to be accessible to everybody, including the many of us who travel by bicycle. I'm a senior also, and my primary mode of transportation is bicycle. I need to be able to safely conduct my business on Solano Avenue, as do the many others in Albany and around Albany who are using a bicycle for transportation. The many families now on cargo bikes, traveling with their children, the many who are going to and from work on their bicycles. So I would just ask you to support this and move Uptown Solano Bikeway to a top priority. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening, Council. This is Nick Pilch, Albany resident, former council member and mayor, member of the Albany Strollers and Rollers, speaking for myself. I want to support the comments of all those who came before me. Wonderful comments. And I'll emphasize three things in particular. I agree that the Uptown Solano Avenue Bikeway project should be priority one. There is plenty of room to support great bicycle, motorist, and cycle facilities, dedicated, protected cycle facilities on the upper part of Solano. Let's take advantage, as all the cities around us have done, and improve the pedestrian and cyclist facilities there. Key Route Boulevard has so much extra room for better pedestrian and dedicated separate cycle facilities. We have a proposed project already that came from staff and which the Transportation Commission approved. Please, let's just do it as our neighbors in El Cerrito have and put dedicated bike lanes, or better yet, separated bike facilities on Key Route. It's, for gosh sakes, it's two roads, two separated roads. And finally, please prioritize the Marin and San Pablo Avenue intersection. It is complete. It is an incomplete. Cyclists traveling eastbound on Marin encounter a dead end. They arrive at an intersection where there is only a pedestrian ramp down to San Pablo and no direction, signage, or striping for how cyclists might continue their journey from the end of that multi-use path to the bike lane on the eastern side of Marin. This is a project, this deficiency has been noted many times over the years and was supposed to be addressed. It should be priority number one so that we can finally finish the excellent work of connecting the eastbound and westbound parts of Marin Avenue. Finally, as I bicycle around, I see more and more traveling by bicycle, including many, many families. And you've heard from some of them tonight here. Please let's understand that our demographic is changing and that people are understanding that shifting from non-motorist modes is one way to improve many things, and including it includes attacking climate change. So let's do the right thing here and prioritize bicycle and pedestrian access. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll bring it back to council for final comments. There's no motion to be taken. We're simply giving, what are we giving you? Suggestions, advice? I'm sorry.
Comments to staff.
Encouragement? I don't know. Okay. Ashley, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Oh. Thanks.
You go and I'll get
Okay. First, I want to thank the resident of the 500 block of Pierce Street that commented, and understandable about the wide sidewalk, which is actually a multi-use path on the west side That was put in place almost 20 years ago, or at least the vote to put in place was almost 20 years ago. And the next step of that is to continue it through Peggy Thompson Pierce Street Park. And I'll ask staff, the commenter said that Caltrans is not going to allow that to happen. Is that your understanding, staff?
There's Caltrans right-of-way. If we go as directly as we'd like to, that involves Caltrans review and easement process. That has not taken place yet, so they haven't said yes or no, but we've engaged with them on what that process would be.
Thank you very much. And as far as the Pier Street South pedestrian improvement project regarding parked vehicles, there was a comment about the owners of property on the east side of Pier Street, houses and apartments and whatnot. And my understanding from looking at maps, the city does own some feet back from the sidewalk, at outer edge of the sidewalk there. So there is potential opportunity for widening the sidewalk. I'm not saying that is what will happen, but that is a possibility that will be looked at presumably in this project. The Marine Avenue Bikeway project is cast, at least was presented to us, as one project, and I'm going to suggest dividing it into two, with one being Masonic East, or maybe even Talbot East, and the other one being the remaining portion to San Pablo. And the reason for that is because that portion that's from Masonic, well, from about Talbot to San Pablo has been rebuilt quite recently, and so already has different features and a different configuration, and maybe more difficult to add a protected bikeway into. So a suggestion to consider that. I'd ask that a fourth biking and rolling priority group, or priority group 4, be created for the biking and rolling projects, and the projects that are priority 3, are not on the high comfort network, be moved into that priority 4, signal that the high comfort projects on the high comfort network should get first attention. And I can send all these notes, so, and you'll obviously also have video, but I'll send notes. Curtis Street is a proposed high comfort route, but on the map, its intersections aren't indicated as in need of upgrade. However, it faces uncontrolled cross traffic at every intersection, so it seems that they should be indicated as needing some sort of upgrade or attention. Otherwise, it's not going to serve as a high comfort route. On the map, those intersections are referred to as unsignalized bicycle priority, which kind of implies that the goal is to signalize them. I would suggest using a different term, such as cross traffic control needed or something like that, so as not to imply that we want to put a signal at every one of those intersections. There are 2 intersections in the pedestrian priority network that I think should come to higher attention, and those are intersections of Francis and Rosen with Peralta. So those are the only intersections in the network, to my knowledge, that don't have either a crosswalk or a stop sign for controlling cross traffic or a signal. So right now, if somebody who's walking wants to get between Posen and Francis, they don't have any support in doing that to get across Peralta. So I see those as more important than any of the other intersections that are on there. Biking projects that are along routes that need intersection upgrades. Intersections are mentioned in some of the project descriptions. I'm interested to hear that there's a more robust description of each project, so maybe this doesn't obtain in the more robust description, but at least in the brief descriptions that were given to us. Some of the projects mention intersections and some don't, and some of the ones that don't are shown on the map as needing intersection upgrades. And so, for example, the Washington project lists intersections that need upgrades, but those aren't really upgrades that are needed for Washington because it has the right-of-way. So they're really upgrades that are needed for the cross routes, Adams, Keynes, Curtis, but it's not mentioned as part of those projects. So I would just ask you to go through and make sure intersections are mentioned for the projects that really need them for those bike facilities to function. There's no cycling facility improvements proposed, or there's no project proposed. Well, there's no cycling facility improvements that are proposed along most of Talbot. There is a Talbot project, but it doesn't talk about making a bike boulevard or anything. It is a proposed high comfort route. One of the speed survey data that I have is that the 85th percentile, somewhere south of Brighton, I don't know where from the data set, speed of motorists was 24.9, and so that's above the NACTO criteria for a high comfort route that's a bicycle boulevard. So I think that needs more attention. In terms of the school access prioritization, Marin Elementary's had over $1 million of improvements in the intersections around it in the last decade or two. And Ocean View Elementary is at over $500,000. They both got new signals. So I'm not as keen on spending more effort at those. It's the highest priority. Cornell has no signalized access, even though it's the only one that's between two arterials. So I definitely support that remaining a priority. Albany High School's had no improvements, to my knowledge, since I moved here in the mid-90s. And so I would like to see the Marin and Ocean View move down in priority and the high school moved up in priority. On the project descriptions for the schools, 3 of them, AHS, Cornell, and Marin, say to consider doing something. And that word consider is not used in hardly any of the other project descriptions. So it's out of balance to have it there. So I would suggest replacing consider with improve and remove change at the end of those particular clauses. The Jackson Adams cycle track project includes improving the intersection of Buchanan and Pierce, which they don't have any spatial relationship to each other, to my knowledge. So I would suggest removing that. Improving that intersection is included in the Buchanan Complete Streets project. That also includes improving the intersections of Taylor and Jackson. And I see Taylor and Jackson as a lower priority than dealing with Pierce for reasons that we've seen in email of how motorists coming south on Pierce cross over the crosswalk there when they're turning right. So I'm not sure what the solution is there, but I encourage you to look at that. And I would suggest adding e-bikes to the education program. And adding to the railroad safety program, it seems currently it has a focus on education. But I think it also needs to have an element of engaging the relevant property owners to actually harden the barriers. So currently the fence on the east side, which is there to preclude people from crossing the railroad at grade and potentially getting smashed, is pretty constantly breached. So they really need to put in a more hardened fence, of which there are more and more examples in our area that Caltrans, for instance, has put in. So those are my comments. And as I say, I will email this whole thing to you, so you have it. Take care.
Thank you. Councilmember Mickey?
Thank you, Mayor McQuaid. Again, I want to thank staff and the consultants team for an incredible work they've done on the ATP. And I particularly appreciate the recognition that many of the corridors that we'll be looking at, from the policy standpoint where we are now, there are multiple options in which we can approach addressing making them both pedestrian and bicycle priority networks. And so I think that's really important that we're not necessarily tying ourselves down to any one particular solution to many of these streets. And I think that will give council and the community more opportunity to have further discussion on really what is the best solution that can work for all of us as a community, but have the overall ATP passed and ready to go on other projects. Specific things on the actual prioritization, I again will echo the comment made earlier by Councilmember Jordan, thanking the community member representing the 500 block of Pierce Street talking about some of the needs for the community on that northern part of Pierce Street. And in particular, I just want to highlight the Cleveland Pierce path. I think that's a really important connector for us as a community over the long term to really help connect that kind of northwest corner of Albany that feels often so disconnected from the rest of us. And I think as that improvement happens, that will really make pedestrian and bicycle access much safer and better. But I think in that sense, I do think that North Pierce Street pedestrian crossings, while that is a lower priority in the overall scheme of things, I believe it has to be a higher priority as Cleveland Pierce path is done, because I believe that right now, if you come out of some of the towers along Pierce Street, there is no crossing for 700 feet. And so we are asking people there is no marked crossing right now. And so I believe that we really should be looking at that as two separate projects, but should be running concurrently as we move forward with the Pierce Street path. And then again, I just will echo really taking into consideration that the Garfield Ohlone Greenway, that we think both for the pedestrian and bicycle access there. If we only build it for pedestrians, bicyclists will still use it, and it will just potentially cause conflicts. So I'd like to just make sure that we think about bicyclists as well. There were a lot of comments about changing priority. I appreciate the comments being brought in and the perspectives brought. I will say that I think, which has been explained to me in the past, and I'm hoping is still the case, is that while the ATP may list a priority, the reality is staff has been in the past, and I hope in the future will continue to be nimble in terms of keeping an eye out for grants, looking for partner agencies that might be able to help with the planning and speeding up the process of some of our planning. And so I think of this priority list as kind of where we stand today, but staff has always done a great job of if something is priority number 3, if a grant comes up, recognizing that it can happen faster and perhaps happen sooner than something that might be listed as priority 1. And so with that, I think I'm not necessarily looking to change any of the order of the priorities. I will echo Councilmember Jordan's comments about the schools. I do believe, the Ocean View, the high school and the middle school could use quite a bit more focus, and I would prioritize those over schools that have already had quite a bit of work done and investment put into them. And with that, I'll leave it for further discussion for other council members.
Councilmember Mickey, you just said Ocean View, Albany Middle School, and Albany High School. Did you mean Cornell?
I'm sorry, I meant, yes, the middle school, Cornell, and the high school.
Okay, thank you.
I haven't,
thought that's what you meant, but
investment made.
yeah, I do make that mistake all the time, so no problem.
It's a little bit later for me than you all. I'm on the East Coast right now.
Vice Mayor, you want to go?
Yeah. So I thank you for the consultant staff, everybody, for taking the time to really go through this process and comb through it and dig out what details we need. And I want to just thank those community members that have called in and commented here in person as well. I do have to say that I'm not, well, first of all, I do want to highlight also the Pierce Street. I live on Pierce, and I do understand that it's very frustrating, especially with the bus not being at the stop where it had been, and being able to connect that part of our community to the rest of the community. Oftentimes, the people in my neighborhood around Pierce, we, feel like leftovers. We feel left out from the rest of the community. It's very difficult to get over that hill and get over that, connection piece and really be part of the rest of the community. So I can wholeheartedly understand I'm sure there's many, many other residents along Pierce, especially in the condos, that would probably echo that same voice. As far as, and I also agree with some of the schools needing some more attention. I know that there's often a lot of complaints I get from residents along Garfield who are often frustrated with the drop-off times of schools, and things can get very messy down there, and the parking, and everybody's fighting each other on everything. However, with regards to the Key Route project that was being looked at, I've also heard of a lot of opposition of Key Route residents. So I would definitely want to investigate further along Key Route, along, speaking to the residents there, speaking to the high school first, kind of, getting a better understanding, getting a fuller picture around there, and just making sure that people understand what is being desired to be there, so that it can work with everybody. Let's see. I do have a question about Masonic and the Loney Greenway kind of expansion there. So I know the bike path there, and then there's the separate walking path, and that bike path goes over the old Santa Fe Railroad that used to be flowing along underneath the BART there. But yet there's also on Masonic now an additional bike lane on the street. Is that correct?
There's currently Sharrow's marking it as a bicycle route, but you mean currently, or what's reflected?
Because I mean,
in
I
the plan?
see when I'm on Masonic, I see a lot of cyclists on Masonic as well as on the bike path, and I do see a lot of near misses on like Dartmouth, where bicyclists will not stop at that intersection. They fly right through, and I've almost seen people get hit several times. I used to live in that area, so that was very visible to me. So I'd want to like try to bring some sort of safety measure in that area of sorts. And then the, kind of, I hear the comments of reducing the mileage of vehicles throughout the city, or how many miles people drive. But I'm also actually equally more, I'm actually more concerned with the lingering of vehicles, because we've made it so slow in some places that you can't get across town at all. And so you've got cars lined up for blocks and blocks and blocks, and they're just sitting there and waiting and waiting and waiting. And that actually is probably producing more adverse effects than if they were able to get through intersections and everything a little bit quicker and not stuck. I mean, I'll come down from Pierce to try to get up to a meeting on Solano just past the BART tracks, and it takes me probably about 18 to 20 minutes. So that is really rough, especially school time, when the meeting's like at 8:15, 8:30 drop off, and I'm all the way up the hill, and I'm sitting there waiting for the light on San Pablo. So now I'm seeing people cut down side streets just to get around and, get to where they need to go. So I'm concerned with that. As far as moving a project up as far as Solano, to put a bicycle track that starts in the middle of Albany and ends in the middle of nowhere on Solano and Berkeley is, for the price that was being quoted in there, is absolutely absurd to me. So I'm not interested in prioritizing that at all. There's so many people who are already commenting me that Solano is an absolute disaster. It's an absolute mess because nobody can get around anywhere, that it's too full. I mean, that is our main business district. We've got, public transportation going. We've got schools around there. We've got all the businesses, we've got trucking being delivered, we've got emergency routes. I mean, there's already so much stuff on Solano. I can't imagine cramming something else on there. So I think that that's a horrible idea. So those are just my comments.
Okay, well, I have a few comments. And again, I will add my thanks to staff and to the consultants and to the public and to everybody who's worked on this for so long. It's nice to be starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. One thing I would, and I know it's priority on here, but I really want to stress again, that we need to finish Keynes Adams. You know, I think we came up with a reasonable plan with the contraflow bike lanes. We need to finish that project, and then we can close the book on that and move on. You know, I heard the comments about Pier Street and people turning right, and there's people crossing and all of that, which brings me to my favorite subject, which is having no right turn on red. And I think we could do that throughout the city with proper signage. Signage we have right now, I think, is a bit lacking. But I think if we just had a city policy that we have no right turn on red, it would be simple. It would be, it's every signal. It's not, is it this one? Is it that one? Does it go this way? Does it go that way? I'd like us to really consider doing that. I agree with Jennifer about key route and really looking at what we're thinking there and really talking with the high school, especially the teachers and the staff and the neighbors, and see what is really needed there. I would agree Cornell Middle School and High School are the next ones to get some attention. Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Mickey. If we only do pedestrian at Garfield and Masonic or the Greenway, there'll be a conflict there. And I guess the other thing I wanted to say is I think railroad safety is really important. I'm not sure this is where it belongs. I think it's kind of a standalone, and perhaps it's something we need to be working with our partners in the railway partners to work through that. I'm not sure it belongs in this plan. And I have to say I agree with Jennifer about Solano. I think we need to move it forward with the amenities that came out of the Complete Streets project. I don't see that there's interest in a cycle track. I also hear a lot of people who don't want it. A lot of businesses don't want it. I would prefer that we move on with obviously the ADA component and then the other amenities. And I think that's it. I guess, again, I agree with Councilmember Mickey. Be nimble and flexible in this plan, which is, I think, the way it's designed. So if something pops up that there's grant funding to jump on it. But otherwise, I think that's it for me.
I may make a couple. Yeah, on key route, and thanks for bringing that up. I realize I didn't pick up on what the commenter who is in the room for the first time, thank you for being in the room and keeping us company, suggested, which was to, there's separate pedestrian project and bikeway project, but usually these things have points of connection and advantages to each other, and the bikeway project has priority 2 and the pedestrian project has priority 3. I think it'd be better to combine the two. Because it doesn't make sense to do an improvement for one, change some hardscape and do all that and not do it for the other one. I mean, more expensive way to do things. So I'd like to see them combined in the same way that Solano is shown as combined and kept at priority 2. I also didn't mention there, one of the priority 2 projects is closing the sidewalk gap on Cleveland between the residential area south of I-80 and the commercial industrial area to the north. And I don't see why that would be a priority. I don't I could be wrong, and staff, please tell me if there's demand for that, but I don't imagine a lot of people are trying to walk back and forth between those two land uses. And that is a very long gap. I mean, that would be a very expensive project to add sidewalks to that whole length. So I certainly don't want to see it as priority two, and I'm not even sure it should be done at all. But in general, I think it's better to keep things on the list because you never know what's going to happen than not. But that's how far I want it deprioritized. I am curious, what do you hear from the businesses about why they oppose the uphill cycle track?
So some of them oppose it for parking, of losing some of their parking. Some have problems with delivery trucks. Those are the things I think we've heard here.
So on the parking, the staff report said 5 to 10% loss, but I engaged staff actually over a year ago when the state called daylighting law went into effect, and said, there's parking spaces on Solano now that have become illegal, and those should be removed. And staff said, well, we'll take care of that down the line. So in calculating that 5 to 10% loss, there's sort of a comparison of apples and oranges because we're comparing number of spaces that would be in a project with a cycle track to the number of existing spaces. But quite a few of the existing spaces are illegal. So it's not really a fair comparison to include those spaces. If you take those spaces out, there's potentially almost no loss. I'll tell another anecdote, which is that the 500 Pier Street project with the multi-use path there, first engineering design, so not even planning level design, but first engineering design had a loss of, 13 parking spaces. And that was quite consternating to the people in Gayview because Gayview was approved with 1 parking space per condominium, per residence. And the engineers worked on it, and in the end, there was no parking loss. So I don't think one should draw a conclusion from this level of planning analysis that there's going to be a parking loss. I mean, there may be, but I know in that project it went fully the other way.
It's also not just the parking loss. And I also want to hold back a little bit here because over the years, and this has been something that's been talked about for many years, is the loss of parking doesn't happen all at once. It happens piecemeal. It happens bit by bit. It happens, and so the amount of parking amenities that we had on Solano 10 years ago has been depleted a lot, just over time, like moving this here, doing that there, putting this in, and then not only that, but you're on one hand, you're like, we also have to keep whatever parking we have, because if we do end up putting in car charging stations, because, people are still going to be driving, hopefully more electric cars, and so we'll have to have that infrastructure, eventually come to fruition. You're going to need parking spaces for those electric cars to do some charging as well. We don't have we're not like any of the other business districts where you've got parking garages off down one block or behind a building, or a trucking, right away that can go behind the building to make deliveries and stuff like that. And it's not just about the fact of losing parking, but it's also for literally, if you look at the amount of money it would cost to put a cycle track that goes however many blocks, like what, 8, not even 8 blocks. I don't even think it's 8 blocks, is it? And it would end at the Berkeley section on Solano, on the east end of Solano, and it's all uphill. And not all of the cyclist users are going to be going uphill. Not all of them have the capability of going up that speed or up that grade. In fact, living on Pierce, I see as soon as kids get to my area around the Washington and Solano, You see everybody's getting off their bikes if they don't have the, powered bikes, and they're walking their bikes up the rest of the hill because the kids are not powerful enough to keep riding. So I don't see the cycle track as being used by all cycle users either when you're going uphill. And I just don't, you have cycle infrastructure on Marin and you have cycle infrastructure on Washington, and those are both flanking Solano Avenue. I just don't see the financial need for it. Does that make sense? It just doesn't compute. Not logical.
Councilmember Mickey, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I appreciate the comments coming from all three members who are in person about Solano Avenue. And I think just in response to a little bit of that, I mean, yes, were we to put a cycle track, if we were to put an uphill bike lane in, it would stop at the city of Berkeley. But I would also offer up that the city of Berkeley's bike master plan essentially says, wait and let's see what Albany does. So I don't know that it would necessarily end at Berkeley were we to choose to move forward with the bike lane. But I do want to, I do also understand this concern with the loss of parking and loading. And I think one of the things that I would hope to see in any project that talks about Solano Avenue, bike lane included or not, is also discussion about more talking about the side streets and loading zones. And so really emphasizing you can go around anywhere in the Bay Area today and DoorDash or Uber Eats, they're double parking. So we're not even talking about regular loading. We're just talking about delivery services. And so both for our deliveries and for our, our business deliveries and our Uber Eats and DoorDashes, just to be able to think about that more holistically. And I want to emphasize that one of the things about the Solano Avenue proposal is that we are going to be looking at all of the improvements that can happen along Solano Avenue. I know we are in particular focused so much on this protected bike lane, but there is so much on the Upper Solano that needs to be relooked at. The streetscape, the lighting, as mentioned in the past, I believe by Councilmember Jordan, the realization that, parking angles are all different along the corridor. And so, having been part of the previous study on Solano Avenue, I would emphasize that there is a need for us to look at Solano Avenue holistically. I don't, just looking at this right now, it is listed as a number 2 priority, knowing that there are other things that we need to continue to keep moving forward on. So I just want to offer that up, is that, I don't think it'll be a bikeway to nowhere. I do believe that the city of Berkeley eventually, if we were to put a bikeway, would a bike lane would include a bike lane. But I also recognize that there are many businesses on our corridor that rely on the parking that's in our corridor. And we as a community have, I think, made the right choice to include parklets as part of our offering along Solano Avenue, and they've brought so much vibrancy to our street. But that also, as has been described, has chipped away at our parking. And so understanding that, as we continue to move forward, what are the trade-offs that we're doing? So.
Thank you. Councilmember Jordan.
Thanks. Yeah, I think there's a misunderstanding on the cost. I know we received a letter that said the cycle track would cost $30 to $50 million. The misunderstanding is that's what staff estimates the entire project cost is for rebuilding Solano. It's not. So I'll ask staff, does at this stage, does including the cycle track as shown in the plan really substantially change the cost one way or the other? I mean, it's on grade, it's on pavement, it's on the existing road surface, so I don't know why it's basically paint.
At this stage, the cost estimate really was low end to high end for the suite of investments, low end being less curb line changes, staying within more of the existing curbs, high end moving both curb lines. But we don't have anywhere near enough information to be distinguishing bike facility, component out of a larger suite of investments. It was really order of magnitude estimate.
I mean, the big expense is extending bulb outs so that they're similar in terms of what they do to the portion of Solano that was rebuilt in the 90s. Because right now the crossings are too long. You know, people are out there on the road for too long. So my understanding of any project that would be done would be moving those curbs further into the streets to narrow the lanes at the intersections. Then that necessitates, and probably be necessitated anyway, redoing the drainage in the subsurface. So, I mean, I haven't heard anything that the cycle track is really a substantial factor in cost, rebuilding the street one way or the other. In terms of it ending, I appreciate what Councilmember Mickey said, and there's actual direct case for this. When Albany reconfigured Marine Avenue, there was a risk that the cycling lanes would stop at Tulare, and Berkeley went second, and Berkeley looked at that, and there was a big effort in Berkeley to get them to continue them to the Alameda, and Berkeley ended up doing that. So it's kind of like the 500 block of Pierce Street. I mean, yes, you have to start somewhere, and council at that time voted to put a multi-use path on the 500 block of Pierce Street with the long-term plan of this path continuing. When you're in an urbanized environment, you have to start somewhere and start creating segments, then eventually you can link the segments up. This segment will connect to the Ohlone Greenway, though, so it is actually going to connect to somewhere. And Councilmember Mickey brought up downtown Solano and how the parklets took away some of the parking. And I mean, that's people I talk to, that's where they want to be because there's more people on the street. And research around cycling facilities tends to show the same thing, is that it increases the vibrancy of the street, it increases the desirability of people wanting to be there. So, you know, obviously you know where I stand, but I think a lot of the arguments that are being made against it are not accurate.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but Steph, like, I mean, we're not even close to, you know, going anywhere really fast with Solano Avenue and just I mean, where are we really? What would need to happen?
We have a near-term project that would just be addressing curb ramp upgrades. For the larger streetscape project, we've described it as a 10 to 20-year horizon project. There's a lot more steady development that would need to happen. There would need to be a substantial funding, planning needing to happen. So yes, we want to know. We want to know priorities for when we should be starting that work, because it's a large lead time effort, but it is going to be a significant time before it would be delivered.
Yeah, so all of this is kind of like not really worth going into the details of that.
Well, that's not my understanding. I mean, staff, of all the projects in the ETP, staff carved this one out and said, we want direction now so we can start moving on it, because it is a 10 to 20 year project.
Well,
so
I think realistically is what really needs to focus on happening right now, if anything, on Solano Avenue is repaving. I mean, the roads are terrible. I mean, it looks awful. And as far as Berkeley adapting and moving forward, they're in a huge deficit right now. I don't think Berkeley's going to be doing anything anytime soon with stuff like that. So I would like to see getting the curb ramps done, getting the paving taken care of, and getting the municipality done of the city, and not talking about the vanity stuff. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, for sidewalk user safety, I certainly want the bulb outs extended.
Well,
And that's not a paving project.
But
it's a streetscape reconstruction project.
But I mean, the nuts and the bolts is what we have, or what we can move forward with limited resources and limited funding that we have. I'd like to see that getting done before talking about anything else.
So that's a question for staff. I mean, my understanding is.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I'm just going to offer up, Councilmember Jordan, but Councilmember Hanson-Romero, I mean, there is a completely separate project for Uptown Solano Avenue ADA curb ramps. We don't cover paving on any of these priorities, but there already is a separation of kind of the improvement of those ramps, and I would share your agreement that I'm hoping that Solano Avenue itself is repaved soon, just knowing that any uptown Solano Avenue streetscape improvements, so the bigger project, that's, even just in planning process, it's 5 years out, let alone finding funding. So it is a longer term plan. So my hope is knowing that we have to do the ADA improvements in the short term, that can also mean we can get better, more high visibility crosswalks, that we can repave Solano. I mean, I think all of those things can move forward while we work through the details of what an Upper Solano Avenue overall streetscape program could look like. So I just want to highlight that, Councilmember Hanson-Romero, because I also want to second your point that we need to move forward with those improvements, both from a legal standpoint, but also just for the vibrancy of our existing businesses today as we work through the planning.
Yeah, because the project, and I'll just say, I don't really care for the lower Solano. I'd rather do, like the east end and the west end of Solano Avenue Street. But basically, from the BART tracks down, so the west end of Solano had a bunch of improvements and stuff, and that was done 25 years ago now, and then it's stopped at the BART tracks and never went forward from there. But I also want to make sure that staff isn't pulled in all these different directions when they already have a lot of low-hanging fruit projects that need to get done, that needed to be completed, that funding and time and consideration has already been focused on. I'd rather get that stuff done and what we have limitations for,
I mean, my understanding of the sequencing was not to do a repaving only project without extending the bulb outs. Because once you do a repaving project, then you don't want to touch the street again for 20, 30, 40 years. So that this process was about deciding what more substantial upgrades would be done as a part with the paving project, repaving as a part of that. But that's worth checking with staff. I mean, is just repaving Solano without making any changes to it on the table? I mean, is my understanding of the sequencing correct, that the desire is to figure this out so it all happens at once?
So there is a level of pavement repair that can be done to address acute issues. Once you get to a level of more complete paving project work, it starts triggering other things that we need to upgrade. So there might be a level of fixing problems that can be addressed shorter term, but once you get to a more complete paving project, you're going to start needing to be dealing with drainage, dealing with green infrastructure requirements, other things that get tied into more of the streetscape suite of components.
Mark, would you like to weigh in?
So I think it is important to know that to acknowledge that the pavement on the Upper Solano is deteriorating. I know last year before the stroll, we had our staff go up and do a number of crack sealing, and that's worked. So I don't think we would do a full repaving job similar to what we just did on Marin, but there will be things like doing dig outs and patching work that would address some of the larger issues, and then potentially a slurry seal to deal with some of the other things. So it wouldn't be necessarily a complete build out, but it would be something that gets us to that point where we have clarity on what the next step would be in terms of more of a streetscape project that would then have all the elements that we saw on Marin.
So I think that confirms my understanding that there isn't like a full repaving project for Solano.
It's not full repaving, but I think we would have to address some of the paving issues.
Right, which I think would happen.
Yeah, we would have to do
regardless
that. Yes.
Of deciding the streetscape.
Because if we do have whether it's with the, whatever the scope of the future project, that's still 10 plus years out, we'll have to do something, and the lifeline or the lifespan of whatever we're going to do. A treatment is likely 10 years out too, so it's not like we're going to be wasting that effort.
We'll offer, as the representative on the County Transportation Commission, that this is on the cycling high injury network, which is a priority for improvement by the commission. So it is possible, I'm not saying this is what would happen, but it is in the realm of probability that if cycling improvements were not included, that we're not going to get a grant to help us rebuild it as a street. So it may actually cost us more if we don't include cycling improvements rather than less.
Define cycling improvements.
Making cycling safer.
That doesn't, I mean,
How would you make cycling safer? I mean, so this is a plan I came up with as a compromise plan. I mean, obviously having cycle tracks both ways would be safer. This is a compromise plan. Just relegating everybody, particularly in the uphill direction, to being on the street with motorists is not going to be safer. This is somewhat safer. Not as safe as it could be, but it is somewhat safer.
so what do you need from us? Because we're sort of in a quandary here. Do you need a definite, yes, you should proceed with?
Sounds like there's different of opinion on whether bike facilities should be included in this. So if there's specific direction on that to change the project components as we have it currently, that would be the comments we'd be looking for. Otherwise, you'll have another look at it when we bring the draft plan before you for consideration for adoption.
We would offer we're missing one of our council members right now, so a 2-2 split, it seems like. It might be best to hold off and bring it back at whatever time when we have the full body here.
That was what I was going to suggest also.
John, is your hand still up?
Yeah, I just had one other comment. Knowing that Mayor McQuaid is trying to wrap this up, I did just want to highlight one thing is that, I want to thank staff for giving us a rough estimate of what Solano Avenue would cost to rebuild. I would argue that whether or not there is a bicycle facility, it's going to be somewhere between $30 and $50 million. If you were to take what was done on Lower Solano and apply it to the rest of Solano Avenue, that is moving both curb and doing bulb outs, which means you're going to be at the higher end, and that facility does not include a bicycle facility. So I just want to make sure that when we're talking about this, the cost isn't a major determinant about whether or not we include it, because I think if you were not to include the bicycle facilities, it's still going to be very expensive because we would be doing sewer work, we'd be moving the curbs, we'd be doing bulb outs at the corners. And so I think, I just want to highlight, I don't believe that the bikeway necessarily means that the cost is higher by including it. So I just wanted to emphasize that as a point. All the other conversation points about the trade-offs of including a bikeway, the benefits and kind of some of the loss of other items, I think are valid conversations, but I don't believe this is actually a money question.
So, and I think you were staff was also just trying to get us to identify if they wanted to move forward with shifting anything around. So I wouldn't see that it would be something that I'd want to shift around as far as where the project stands for Solano at this point.
Regardless of the bicycle piece, Solano is a huge undertaking. How does it impact everything else that we want to do? Can we do more than Solano at the same time?
Why don't I jump in on that one? I think regardless of the scope, that would be such a large project that we would do some other sort of construction funding, whether it's bonding or grants or some combination of that. My sense is that at some point, maybe in the next CIP, we would want to establish a project where we would do maybe, a pre-designed report or something where we can flesh out some of these issues and make decisions about what that scope would be and what the impacts, and that would have, in my mind, kind of the same process that we go through where we develop it, go to commissions, reach out to the community, and then come back to the council to really solidify what that design would be, have a better sense of cost, timeline, and then that would be sort of the basis for going forward in a design.
I appreciate the idea of having it, I'm not sure I'm saying this right, but sort of as a standalone project that's funded possibly through a bond or whatever, while everything else is going along, because I don't want to stop everything for Solano Avenue for the next 5 to 10 years. And that's
So we would not stop the curb ramp project. That's going and is in process, and we will get that done toward 2029. I think we would also look at the pavement. That would not, any sort of interim sort of paving would not change. I think this would be specifically a streetscape project that's more of a longer term to allow us to work through some of these issues.
and that actually makes sense to me. Thank you. With that, I think we might have an agreement. Oops, where am I looking? Councilmember Mickey, are you on board?
Good, thank you.
Okay. Now, does that give you what you need?
I think so.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Thank you all. We look forward to seeing you when we adopt the document and cross the finish line hopefully very soon in the next couple months. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. Okay. That brings us to council member reports on meetings attended, announcements of future meetings. Vice Mayor, do you want to start?
Actually, I need some time to think.
That's usually my position. I have the advantage of being in the middle, so I'm never first. So I sympathize with you completely. Maybe note to Mayor, sometimes start from the inside out. That way the people in the ends can get a break.
Okay, I'll remember that.
Yeah.
I have an easy report out. I have
Right, that's right. Yeah,
I
randomize
got
it.
you 10 seconds there.
Have the clerk draw straws for that as well. Yes, so I attended the Planning Policy and Legislative Committee of the County Transportation Commission. The main item I think of interest to report here is that the countywide transportation plan for 2026 is going forward, and this is a plan that would basically define the projects that are eligible for compete for funding over the next 5 years. I want to thank staff for the Albany projects that are included, and I think for the council it would be helpful to know what Albany projects are included in the list. So Buchanan Streetscape is included for $10 million estimated cost. Solano Avenue Streetscape is included for a cost of $50 million. There are 8 in total, so bear with me. Pierce Cleveland Bikeway Connection is included for a estimated cost of $6 million. Greenway and, no, sorry, I need to forward. Yeah. Bear with me a moment. Okay, there we go. Active Transportation Program is included in the programmatic section. Those prior ones were in the project section. Also in the programmatic section is citywide streetlight renewal, RIN pavement and curb ramp rehabilitation, which is interesting because that just got finished. Sidewalk rehabilitation and annual street rehabilitation. So those are the projects that Albany has submitted that they're at least eligible to compete for funding in the next round. I also attended as the alternate AVA Community Energies meeting, which was not to be fairly fascinating. There were two items of considerable discussion. I'll relay one of them was adopting discussion leading to the adoption of policy to prohibit contracting with any companies with some reasonable exemptions and exceptions that have contracts to support ICE in immigration enforcement. And yeah, I'll leave it there.
So on the funding that's potentially available, is there a timeline?
So as I say, this is over the next, being on this list qualifies these items to be eligible to compete for funding over approximately the 5 years once it's adopted. Once this kind of transportation plan is adopted, these are adopted in like a 5-year cycle. So this will be adopted, the current schedule is later this year. And so then they'll be eligible to compete as they have grant round calls over the next 5 years. You know, it's pretty consequential.
I was thinking about the Solano project if we're talking 10 years out.
Well, so so.
Wouldn't be excluded because our timeline's so long.
Well, I mean, my guess would be, staff can weigh in. My guess would be that in this 5-year phase, the city would be competing for a grant to pay for the engineering, you know, rather than construction, because it's a long enough project that you got planning, you got engineering, you got construction. So that's my guess.
Okay. Councilmember Mickey, did you attend anything?
Sorry, I jumped in earlier and said that I have nothing to report.
Okay, sorry, I missed it. Vice Mayor, did you want to jump in?
I will say I do have a meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, for stop waste. Oh, sorry, my mic's not on. And actually, Councilperson Mickey, I was going to ask you if you could stand in. I did get an email for the East Bay Sports Field, and you're my alternate. I have a conflict on the date that they finally decide to do a meeting. So it's going to be, what is it, the Wednesday? Well, I'll send you the details, but if you're available, that would be great. But yeah, I don't think.
I will tend to, I will say that highly likely that I would be able to attend.
Highly likely you will be able to or won't be able to?
Yeah, it looks like May 6th is the date.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, yeah, I can attend that.
Okay, great, thank you. And that's all I have.
Okay. I attended the East Bay Mud annual meeting with Member Katz. I have to say that Albany staff was there, Allison was there and did a great job presenting some of the concerns that Albany has. So that was great to have her there. Attended the mayor's conference. Councilmember Jordan and I met with the city manager to sort of do the framework around our ad hoc committee. There's more to come. I attended the Parks Master Plan meeting at the community center. Housing Authority met, the library board met. I was at the closing to Pass Belonging, which was another great event that they did. And the rest of this week, I'll be at Sacramento at this Cal City City Leaders Summit. Do we have any future agenda items? Any public? Okay. That's it. Upcoming, oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yes, Lucinda Young, I would like to suggest that we explore a BISO rating system like Berkeley's. They've had one for about 10 years. Now, as of January of this year, they started a requirement that certain improvements had to be made at sale. I'm not suggesting that second part. I'm just suggesting a rating at the time homes are sold. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, all upcoming meetings and events are on the website. And with that, at about I'm sorry, we have another, do you have an agenda item?
I have an announcement. Is this an appropriate time for that?
Should announce, you should have done it in public comment.
I'm sorry. Okay, well, I'll wait till the next time. Thank you. That's fine.
Okay, with that, we are adjourned at 9:48.